Good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here. I wish I could have been here earlier, but I was just telling um, I had one of my friends, I joined KPMG in 2003, October, and they take us to this place, right, where you bond, whether you're in consulting or whatever. So yeah, one of my friends that we became friends on day one there, she passed last year. So today is like her 1 year anniversary. We got so close. But I don't want to, this is a very interesting and happy day. I want you all to just celebrate yourselves because you are just here. It takes a lot of effort, right, to take time to even want to develop yourself. So I have a speech, but I'll be sharing, some stories as I go through my speech. So first of all, I want to congratulate all of you on your graduation from the Hardy Business School, the Business Leadership Program. You've taken a bold step to be here. In this world that is always busy, so, taking your time and prioritizing wanting to sharpen your knowledge, that's already a win. So can you appreciate yourselves again? And the thing is that 9 weeks is not a joke. We know how it is. Everybody here is working, so you dedicated time, and that's a lot. So today, they said the title is really rewriting the playbook. Sometimes when I look back, I'm always like, okay, but how did you even get here? So I'll just share 10 lessons, right, or principles that I think has helped me in one or two ways. I think I've really, just rewritten some playbooks and how I've gotten into some opportunities that I didn't even plan to. Does that sound like a good plan? I'm trying to get the energy as well. So the first principle that I've written here is, number one, you have to have your anchor and seek clarity on who you are. Have a plan and have a journal. How many of you journal here? Journaling is very important. So sometimes when I carry my journal, it's as if it's torn and everything, but it just shows where I started from. And from an early days, I was raised in a Christian home. So I don't know how many of you here. I grew up in the Apostolic Church. I don't know when you say the Apostolic Church, Joe Apostolic, no. God first. So, from a very early age, we always had that one thing. If you went to that church, there's a way that during services, they will just, it's like you get a prophecy. And I was very young. I didn't understand it. Somebody would just start and just say, "Bye, Lioduawi," meaning "Thus says the Lord." In my mind, I'm like, is God bringing his mouth into the church? And, it was very mysterious to me. And, there was something they also used to do. Every month, they would call children to the front and anoint them. I didn't understand what God was at that point, but I just felt like because God used to bring his mouth, that was how I used to see that thing and talk to us. And when they anoint us, I just felt like I was untouchable. So whenever I go to school, I always had this mentality from a very young age that there was nothing I couldn't conquer because God that is in heaven that could bring his mouth to come and talk to all of us in the church. So, and in my journey, I stumbled on this thing and it became my anchor. For those of us that are Christians here, whatever it is that is your anchor, whatever religion. And it was Psalm 139 verse 16. It says, I saw it and I think I was about 8 then. And it says, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me are within your book. Before one of them came to be. So in my mind, I'm like, if God has seen me before in my unformed state, there's really nothing I can conquer. So the first one is I knew my anchor and I had this spirit of, even if it's rough, even if it's, I would do it, right? And that was it, right? And after I finished school, I joined KPMG. I wrote the test. It was one of the early tests. So I'd done EcoBank. I went to do EcoBank tests. One of my uncles, was in EcoBank. They gave me my CV. I didn't do the CV properly. So I just copied my sister's CV. And I remember that when I got to the last thing, my sister can actually speak French. So in the last thing, I'm not joking. So, my name is Bode. My sister's name is Bola. So I remember that day. It was in 2003. I'd passed everything. I was very sharp in school. So I remember when I stepped into her office, she now said, So I now remember that Bode, you copied somebody's CV, didn't even look at it. And the next thing, she now said, she now said, but in your CV, you said you could speak French. In my mind, I knew that was a failure for me. So I didn't want to. I just remembered Mrs. Wanko, my French teacher in secondary school, how she used to conjugate. Instead of me to just keep quiet, I said, je suis, tu es, il est. She was like, Bode, come on. And that was the end of the interview. When I go, she kept saying something to me. She kept saying to comprend. So when I go home, my sister Bola was now like, Bode, how was your interview and everything? So I now said, Bola, what does to comprend mean? She was like, Bode, it means, do you understand? I said, chai. So for a long time, my name in the house, they used to call me to comprend. Please don't call me to comprend outside. So the funny thing is, I now did KPMG. Of course, I passed the KPMG test. And, the early days of my career, they took me to a warehouse, right? So in those days, that was when MTN was doing their BTS. And, they put me in the warehouse. I had 2 suits, that I had used all my money to buy. And they took me to Abuja. All my other friends, they put them on, cha-cha projects and everything. And some of my good friends were also in Abuja. So I remember one of the guys, he's a very senior guy in the country now. He used to be in MTN then. And he looked at me one day, was like, but they stop wearing these suits. Because my job was, I'll come to the warehouse, right? I was supposed to count, because MTN was saying they were stealing their materials, that they needed KPMG. That was an independent person. They were like, but they are counting bolts, screws, do you understand? For engineers, why are you wearing your suits and everything? So I was very depressed. I was like, so after all my first class, everything, is this where I'm going to end up? Like, why am I counting screws when Bola is in MTEL, in NITEL, they are drawing process maps and everything? And then, KPMG gives you a performance manager. So I talked to my performance manager, and she told me that, but everything that you do, right, it always comes together, that I should just apply myself inside that place that I was. And funny enough, I just took the attitude. I started wearing my jeans. I'll go there. I now started asking questions. I'll do research. What does this mean? How do you do inventory? So I was in the warehouse for about 3-4 months. So when I came back to Lagos, right, guess what? There was a big project. What was it? MTN re-engineering project. They were not like, who do they start? They were like, oh, by the way, Bode was in the maybe show. I got there. And that was where my career started, because before they ask of this process, I knew the process cold, right? So, and that's what I'm saying to my point. So the first point is your anchor. Know who you are, seek clarity, because that's where you start from, whatever that anchor is. The second thing is that everything always comes together, right, in your journey. And that was where I started from. I started doing the processes, and my career just started taking off from there. My third point is be aware of your strengths, right? Recognize what your strength is. So for me, I knew that paying attention to detail, there's this strength test. If you go online, now the world is easier and better. You can do a strength test. Some of us, we focus on our negatives. What can't we do? So one of the things I found was that I was a very detailed person. I'm resilient. It doesn't matter what the challenge is. And I started thinking back that even in secondary school, it'll be like, but they would solve the most difficult questions. So I now started going that path, right? And I was like, okay, this is my strength. And then an opportunity now came. I don't know how many of us remember when there were about 80-something banks in Nigeria. Then Soludo increased minimum capital to 25 billion. Right? And then when that opportunity came, KPMG now sat and said, if you're in audit, auditors always get work. But in consulting, you always have to think that where is the next opportunity? So we now said the next opportunity is if there are now 25 banks, people are not rushing. How many of you had an account in Savannah Bank? I had an account in Savannah Bank, and my money is still in that bank. Because that time, once we hear anything, you run, and you go and get your money. Right? So we now said the next thing, right, was, so when they were doing Let's Brainstorm, I always put my hands up for opportunities and challenges. When they said we needed 5 people to come and work with us, you won't have a weekend, I didn't have a boyfriend, I didn't have anything. So I was always volunteering for opportunities. So we sat down, they now said, okay, let's do this survey. And that was how I started taking this. So everybody ran away because what did it mean? Sometimes we had to go to Lagos Island, we'll stand in the sun, ask customers, which bank do you bank with? We're doing all of that. I did that for about 3-4 years. After some time, I grew in it. I started leading the thing. I led that thing for almost 10 years. But the beauty is that we were talking to corporates, we were talking to customers. Anywhere I was, because I put in that work, I was able to describe everything from head to toe. It didn't happen in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. But after some time, if you're looking for anything customer, they'll be like, okay, go and meet Bode. She probably knows everything. But I went above and beyond. Guess what I did? I now said, KPMG, London, KPMG, it wasn't connected. We all KPMG office because we used to be Arthur Andersen. So I now did research. I now found out that there was a fund, right, for anybody that wanted to do customer advisory. And that fund was in KPMG UK. So I wrote to my partners. I said, I think there's an opportunity for us to do customer advisory, that they should send me to the UK. All of them were looking at me, that was this. I'd done a paper. I went to go and present it. They were like, okay, the fund actually exists. Okay, Bode is going. Another thing I did was, I had a visa by myself, without the office sending me. I had a UK visa. So I just went to go and get visas to places I thought I was going, because I already knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be great. I wanted to be good. Because now, when I got to Flutterwave, wanted to do like a retreat, I found that people that were senior managers, they didn't have a passport. I'm like, you don't have a passport, but you're waiting for opportunities. I had a visa. I had a passport. They said, Bode, okay, we'll approve. But do you have? I said, I have a visa. But do you have? There is no longer. It's now in Portugal. I have a visa to go to Portugal, and that was how they sent me, and I got the opportunity. And I did that, and I came back. Who naturally would lead customer advisory? It's me now. Do you understand? There was no other person, because I came back. After the training, even the South African people, they'll be like, but why are you always carrying our maps? I didn't really understand everything, but I was like, if I can get these maps that they put on this thing, when I get back, I'll call my team, we'll look at it. And that was what I did. In my box, I laid all the maps, all the examples, every single thing. And that was how I came back. I went to Access Bank, to Albert and Ig, because we're already working with them. We pitched it with my partner, and that was how Access Bank said, okay, come and do it. After I finished, because I was doing strategy for Shegun and his team as well, I sold to all our clients, and I grew customer advisory just by looking at it. So opportunity meets the prepared is my next point, meaning that you can't say you want to change the playbook or you want to do something without you thinking about the opportunity. You have to be prepared, and you have to know where exactly you're going. Now, the other thing is, as you're doing this, my next point is that no knowledge is lost. I put here that learning mode always. And I'm happy that you are here at Hardy Business School. Please clap for yourself again. But the thing is that you have to spend time reading wide, reading deep. And I'll give you an example. There was one client, he's late now, but he was very influential. So my partner, we used to go to his office, but he will say he's not talking to me until my partner came into the office. Meanwhile, I think I was already a senior manager then. I was like, how do I break into this man that without BC coming, we can start having a meeting? So I looked around his office. I saw he was an Arsenal fan. I said, okay, no problem. Then when I got home, guess what I did? I said, I don't like football. Sorry to all Arsenal fans. But I started reading about Arsenal. I knew all the players. I crammed it. If there are matches, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to see Tech tomorrow. I'll now ask my friends who played today. What's the match? Did Arsenal score? Who scored? And that was how I started. When I got to his office, I'll be like, Tech, by the way, up Arsenal. I'm like, what's wrong with this one? And that was how we found it. It was like, Bode, which club do you support? I just tried to remember. I was like, I'm a Chelsea fan. He said, oh, Chelsea. And that was how we started, right? Every time, when I found out his birthday, whenever I'll buy something, and that was how one day my partner came. We had finished the meeting. He was like, Bisi, don't worry. Bode and I have sorted everything. And you know what that counts for? Because in consulting, it's skills and behaviors and how you can bring in revenue. So to my next point, you must be entrepreneurial, meaning that, You don't necessarily have to be your business, but that entrepreneurial spirit will just keep driving you. I can't tell. There are many, many examples I can give of how I'm always seeking opportunities, and that's part of how I got into Flutterwave, because before I get into the Flutterwave, one of the points I also want to make is volunteer. How many of you volunteer here? When I started doing the customer thing, after some time, I was like, okay, I asked my friends, what platforms can I go? Anybody that wants to learn about customer, can I go and teach about customer? How many of you have heard of Faith Foundation? So that was how I registered into Faith Foundation. Then my church, Covenant, they started this business school. I went to meet the leaders. I was like, I know customer. I can be teaching customer. It wasn't easy, because by 8 o'clock, you have to be there every Saturday. For like the way you guys had 9 weeks, they had a cohort. I had to be there 8 o'clock. I was always there. And the thing about volunteering is that they're not paying you now. So you can tabon, you can make mistakes, but you are honing your skills. Do you understand? Even if it's in small groups. So I had this deck. I will use it. I will improve on the deck. I remember even in improving yourself, in KPMG, we used to do, when we're doing our strategy, there was something we used to, give people, like papers. I went to him, I was like, this thing, maybe I can turn it into a video. Do you know, I went online, taught myself how to turn, it was like somebody was trying to do a game. So it's like an icebreaker thing. So you read it as a paper. But I was like, people would be more excited if this thing was in video form. I created a video, and it just elevated our strategy sessions to another. So you're constantly thinking that, how do I change this game? Are you guys with me? I hope you're learning one or two things. Now, I had been working with the banks, right? I had worked with Segun Agbaje and his team. I led project covers. I had worked in First Bank. So most of the Tier 1 banks, I had done strategy for them. I was doing banking survey. Banking survey gave me an opportunity to be in every room that's a CEO, because they want to know what they scored, because the banking survey was an industry survey. I'll go and tell them the results. Where you came last, Zenith, you came first. So everybody wanted to listen to what they came and what the gaps and what the customers were saying. And one of my friends just told me that, because I was volunteering, people knew me. If you had a small business, then people would be like, oh, talk to Bode, she'll be able to help you. I wasn't collecting any money for this. And then somebody called me, one of my friends, Toyosi, she was like, oh, Bode, I know this very small startup. They're very small. It's in and Benga. They need help. That was in 2017. But it was, they want to figure out their structure. Now, I was in strategy. I was building models. Anything that has to do with people, HR, I didn't want to hear. I used to run away from it in KPMG. When you're on the bench, you want to get a job. People, my partners will be like, but there's this age. I'll be like, no. I'll say I have tummy ache. I didn't want to do anything that had to do with structure. So when she said structure, I was like, no, I'm not. Like, she gave me his number. I was like, I'm not calling him because I'm not a structure person. And as I was going to my seat, I heard it clearly that, but they make that call. So my next point is be sensitive to pivots and periods of change. So I made that call, and he wasn't available. And then he said, oh, please call GB. So I called GB, and that was in August, right, 2017. It was an HR job, it was a Saturday. And I tell you that since that August 2017 till I officially joined them in 2018, we practically met every weekend. I was always helping to strategize, just helping them to build what you saw today as Flutterwave in terms of the thinking. And the reason why it was like that for me was because, in consulting, now your friends will be like, Bode, you bring your laptop, you bring your this, you come and drink our tea. Everything we've told management, you repackage it, you tell them in another way, collect our money. So that has always been in the back of my mind, that any opportunity that came that gave me an opportunity to actually get my hands dirty, I'll get into it and all of that. And then when I met GB, I remember the first day, he just described what he was doing. What he was doing just felt like I was on the other side of everything I was telling the banks to do. Because, we would have brought our people, our partners from Brazil, our partners to come and describe this future. So he did some tests for me. It just felt like engineering come to life, something you can touch and feel. So if you're not reading wide, if you're not, so once you find your path, you have to sort of enter it with, you have to get wet with your whole body and find a path that people begin to know you for. It's like always sharpening that thing. And honestly, that was how, I didn't want to join a startup because all my partners were, when I went to tell, they were like, what's Flutter? Okay, go, but your seat is here whenever you're ready and all of that. Of course, I spent time thinking, but I just felt like it was time to actually make the move. I was actually trying to take a career break because I had just given birth to twins at that time in 2015. So I was like, okay, maybe I should take a break and focus on the children. And then that opportunity came. And with the opportunity, it was like, okay, we'll be flexible, it's remote, all those sort of things. And it sort of worked at that time. Now, the point is, for family people as well, when they give you a task in the office, there's a way you go about it with your heart, body, mind, and soul. So if you have kids at home too, the same way you do a job description for the people you are hiring, take the home front too very seriously. Have a plan. I think one of the things I did was, how you want to hire, I don't just hire anybody, right? I take the time, I do culture check, I'll bring my friends, we'll do all of those things. I went through the process, I'll get some teachers, because I wanted to be sure that the people that were also working with me were qualified. I put my own standard. You must have done NYSC. In fact, when some of my friends now, they'll be like, okay, if you want to hire a house help, go and, Bode has one process map she has drawn, and she can help you. And I helped quite a number of people because they didn't look at it that way. So every other thing in terms of the process, the days you buy stuff, because all those times, they eat into your time. You can't rewrite the playbook if you don't have a process for everything, because you must be able to have a process where you have time to be able to even take back to rewrite that playbook. Am I helping someone? All right. Okay. The next point I want to make is about relationship and network currency. I wrote here that not just at the top, across all levels, meaning that as you grow, when you start, even in the bank, it's not like I just walk into the bank and there's all the MDs, there's ABO, there's the secretary, there's everybody along the line. You are building relationships because another 5-6 years, some of those people will become MDs, they will become decision makers. So be a good person, build relationships along the way. I remember there was one team, it was a church. They reached out to me that, okay, but we were trying to build a database. Here, I was already in Flutter, if you can imagine, as in, they were like, oh, our team of people from this unit in that church, that can you spend 1 hour to talk to us? I was like, okay. I looked at my calendar, I was like, I'm free. And I did that. They were so appreciative that they told their pastor was so wild. Their pastor now introduced me to somebody that was building a hotel somewhere in Lagos. And it was a very big hotel. It's a very popular hotel in Lagos. So the guy called me. He was just about to start then. I didn't even think about it like, oh, what do I want to charge you? Because I just thought he just wanted my thoughts in terms of how to go about it. I sat with him maybe 3 or 4 weekends. It was so wild that sometimes it's not all about money, right? Because, when you volunteered, you know that it's not like that. And I tell you that after that, I think a lot of the projects, like 1 or 2 projects I've done, anywhere I go, the guy would just say, oh, but they helped me to do this. When he was starting up, when he brings his Michelin chef, when we're tasting food, he will send them to my house, right, with siren to come and carry me, just come and taste food. As in, when I walk in, you can imagine all these people in society, they'll be here. As I'm passing, they'll be like, this is Bode, my consultant. This is Bode, my consultant. Just because, and those weekends, right, I just dedicated it that, okay, this is a good thing because that's just who I am. Do you understand what I mean? So it's also very important. In your team, the next point is invest in your team and lead by example. I was already a director in KPMG. I spent about 15 and a half years. I was about to make partner when I made the move. And I remember one of the first tasks that Benga told me was, we have to build a contact center. So at a point, I was like, okay, 24/7 contact center. You know me, I was a consultant. I know the theory. When I do framework, bring up like, but if I don't want framework, just go and do contact center. I don't want to say anything. In my mind, I'm like, okay. In the industry, they knew me as customer, but honestly, maybe I really didn't know this customer thing because, I hadn't gotten my hands into that. So one of the things I did that really made my team. So, overnight, we got a room, I'd gotten the tools, everything. And I was with them for the first day that we're going to do the overnight. Mosquitoes were biting us, but they couldn't talk because I was there. Do you understand? We're taking the calls together. I spent the night there, bought drinks, bought food, they were even just so in awe that, okay, Bode is here with us. Who am I? Where am I going? Why I'm saying this is because the team, they look at you, do you understand? And sometimes they will go to war for you because they know that you've got their back. So be a problem solver. When people come to you, I'm not saying micromanage, but remove issues. Do you understand? Remove issues. And I think that was how, when I moved, because startup, you're very young. I was also trying to understand all these new people, all these engineers, who are they? But because I sat down and I would tell them, what's your issue, what's the challenge? I was seen as a problem solver. If they needed any issue, they could count on me. And when you build your team that way, like if somebody that was jovial is not talking again, you find out that maybe he can't pay his house rent or there was no lights, his shirt is not ironed. Pay attention to little things like that. And you'll see that you're actually creating an army that they will go to war with you at any time. I was speaking at the platform last year, and I was telling someone that the person that did my slide is actually a partner in KPMG, but when I knew him, he was just an analyst because I practically, do you understand, trained him. All I have to say is, please, Wale, I need this slide, and he will get it done. Do you understand? So can you reach out to the people that you have led, and they are willing to do a lot of things for you? When I started Strata, imagine I had done Flutterwave, and now started a startup, meaning that I was working with white people in Washington, and I had to recruit people from bottom again. Do you understand? But I could call on people that were experienced and be like, oh, Vivian, I know you have your work, but can you go to Abuja with me? And they will drop everything just to make sure you win that bid. Who is with me? I think the last point, I don't know, I'm sure my time is done, is that enjoy your journey. Enjoy it because it's very important that you are well aware that you're on a journey, and be humble because it's in the heart. If your heart is right, sometimes all these things, sometimes I was with some people like, oh, but a woman in tech, it doesn't even register that. I just feel like I'm on a path and I'm trying to, do you understand, do what is next for me in terms of my mission, the industry, the pivot, and making an impact wherever I go. I hope this has been helpful for somebody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.